on location of your emergency?
Something is happening. Something happened in our house. We don't know what.
What is the address of the emergency?
1122.
And tell me exactly what's going on.
One of the roommates has passed out, and she was drunk last night, and she's not waking up.
Okay.
Oh, and they saw some man in their house last night. Yeah. She's not so. What's wrong? She's not waking up. Yeah.
November 13th, 2022, Moscow, Idaho. Well, a 911 call was made just before noon, but the nightmare had begun by dawn. The call was supposed to be about an unconscious person, but it revealed a horrifying truth hidden behind the quiet walls. A bloody massacre that stunned the entire nation. A surviving roommate, panicked, confused, had just seen with his own eyes the masked man walk out of the house, carrying 4 people who had been stabbed to death in the night. Moscow, a small, sleepy town in Idaho, USA, where college life moves at a steady pace. Small sidewalk cafes, the quaint brick buildings of the University of Idaho, and streets covered in autumn leaves. All paint a picture of tranquility, until one morning in November 2022. The 3-story house at 1122 King Street, just a few minutes walk from campus, was home to 6 young students. It was a rental home that was familiar to the student community. Friendly, lively, and a place where friends often hung out. Of the 6 who lived there, 4 never returned to class after the shocking incident. Kaylee Goncalves, 21, is a senior majoring in general studies. She is smart, bubbly, loves animals, and plans to move to Austin after graduation. Kylie is a leader, close to her friends, and is active in the school community. Madison Mogan, also 21, is Kaylee's best friend since childhood. They grew up together in Coeur d'Alene and moved to Moscow for college. Madison is majoring in marketing with dreams of starting her own advertising agency. The 2 girls are always together, inseparable, from class to parties. Zana Kernodal, 20, is a 3rd-year marketing student. She lives with Madison and Kaylee. Lively and friendly, Zana is easy to get along with and always makes people laugh. Her boyfriend, Ethan Chapin, also 20, is a freshman majoring in sports management. Ethan lives in the dorms, but that night he spent the night at his girlfriend's house. The house on King Street was not just a place to live, but also a part of their young lives. The college parties, the study groups, the late nights of storytelling. None of them, friends, neighbors, or family, could have imagined that overnight, the house would become the center of a murder investigation that would shock America. They were young, talented, beloved people in the community. But in just a few short hours, all were brutally taken from this world, leaving behind inconsolable pain for their families and society. The case is not just a personal tragedy, it is a nightmare that has cast a shadow over a small community that is accustomed to peace. The lives of those 4 students before that fateful day continued as if they were ordinary. In the house at 1122 King Street, each person had their own schedule, their own pace of life, but they were still connected by friendship, late-night meals, and studying together until dawn. Kaylee has just finished her studies and is planning to move to Texas to start a new career. During her last days in Moscow, she returns home to visit her friends and meets Madison, her childhood best friend, to say goodbye to the old chapter of her life together. Madison is busy preparing for her graduation, but she doesn't forget to spend time with her loved ones. The 2 girls often post photos together on social media, sharing simple everyday moments, like eating at their favorite restaurant, walking their dog, or sitting together on the roof watching the Moscow sunset. Zana and Ethan are a young and vibrant couple. They have only been officially dating for a few months but have become inseparable. Ethan, despite living in the dormitory, often visits Zana's house and easily integrates with her housemates. They enjoy going to school basketball games, cooking together, and are not afraid to share their feelings on social media. It was a pure, playful relationship, typical of young college sweethearts. Weekends were usually a busy time in the house. Saturday nights were spent hanging out with friends, then heading home together. The night of November 12th, 2022, began like that, a normal evening with a familiar routine. Ethan and Zana attended a party at the Sigma Chi fraternity. Madison and Kaylee went to the Corner Club, a bar in downtown Moscow where they were regulars. Afterwards, they stopped by a food truck, a regular stop when they were out late. No one expected that night, like any other night, would be the last time they would see the sun. The smiles in the photos, the short videos, the text messages they sent home. All of these now became the last records of the young students who had once been so vibrantly present in this world. In the yellow light of the street lamps, they returned home, the door closing behind them, no one knowing that what followed was a deathly silence, a night the city would never forget. Saturday night, November 12th, 2022, a normal weekend in Moscow, Idaho. The small town is still bustling on the weekend as students pour out into the streets, bars are crowded, and laughter echoes from dorm and house parties. 4 students, Ethan, Zana, Madison, and Kaylee, start their evening like everyone else, unaware that this will be the last night of their lives. Ethan and Zana leave their house around 8 p.m. to attend a party for the Sigma Chi fraternity, of which Ethan is a member. The party is lively, with friends, music, and laughter. They are seen at the party until around 9 p.m., returning home around 1:45 a.m. on November 13th. Both are sober, showing no signs of anything out of the ordinary. A neighbor's surveillance camera captures them walking into the house through the back door. After buying food, Madison and Kaylee called a ride-hailing service and returned home at 1:56 a.m. The driver confirmed that the 2 girls did not appear nervous or anxious and spoke normally during the trip. The door of 122 King Road closed for the last time. Meanwhile, Madison and Kaylee started their night by going to the Corner Club bar, a popular spot for University of Idaho students. They arrived around 10 p.m. and stayed until 1:30 a.m. No one noticed anything unusual. After leaving the bar, the 2 girls stopped at a food truck, Grub Truck, where cameras captured them lining up to buy food, chatting happily with the server and several other students. A male friend standing next to them in the video was later ruled out as a suspect during the investigation, with them after returning. At the time, the remaining occupants of the house, the 2 surviving roommates, were in their rooms and heard nothing unusual. One of them would later testify that she had woken up around 4 a.m. to a noise, a soft cry and a whispering voice, but not enough to make out what was going on. She opened the door, and that was when she saw a tall man dressed in black, wearing a mask, walking past her, towards the sliding door at the back of the house. Not a scream, not a cry for help was heard from the 3-story house that night. All was silence, waiting for the next morning's light to reveal the chilling truth. The time between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m. on November 13th, 2022, is determined to be the time of the tragedy. In the dead silence of the winter night, when the whole city was still asleep, a stranger quietly approached the 3-story house at 1122 King Road, carrying a large knife in an incredibly gruesome intention to kill. The killer is believed to have entered through the sliding door on the first floor at the back of the house, an entrance that is rarely noticed and is often left unlocked when someone is in the house. He walked lightly, purposefully, possibly having studied the structure of the house beforehand. With 3 floors and many bedrooms, the killer would have needed to know exactly where his target was, a detail that made police suspect that he had been following or had entered before. Ethan Chapin and Zana Kernodle are believed to have been the first 2 victims. They were in a room on the 2nd floor, Zana's room. Evidence at the scene suggested a struggle. Zana had injuries to her hands, suggesting she had tried to fight off her attacker, but was unable to escape her fate. Ethan had been stabbed multiple times, dying instantly. It was a swift, decisive attack, but not a quiet one. After killing the couple on the 2nd floor, the killer continued to the 3rd floor, where Madison Mogan and Kaylee Goncalves were sleeping in the same bed, as was usual when Kaylee visited. The girls were lying side by side with no chance of escape. The wounds suggested they had been stabbed in their sleep, and there were no signs of a major defense. Kaylee had been attacked more brutally, as if she had been the primary target, something that later became controversial when her family requested a private investigation. The killer left no belongings behind. The victim's laptop, wallet, and phone were left where they were. The killer didn't make enough noise to alert the two downstairs roommates to the full truth. Only one person caught a glimpse of him, a tall man dressed in black, wearing a mask and a hood, walking down the hallway and leaving the house through the back sliding door. A knife sheath, identified as the type used for a K-bar military knife, was found on Madison and Kaylee's bed. It was this piece of evidence that would become the key to the search for the killer's identity, and it would be weeks before the name Bryan Kohberger would be revealed. In the early hours of that morning, an eerie silence still hung over the house. The four young students had left this world forever, and the killer had disappeared into the night as if he had never existed. On the morning of November 13, 2022, the house at 1122 King Road was still unusually quiet. The two surviving roommates, who had slept downstairs, woke up late, thinking that their friends were still resting after a long night. When one of them went to check on them, she was stunned by the sight before her. One of her friends had not woken up even though it was noon, and there were signs of abnormality on his body. Neither of the girls understood the full gravity of the situation. At 11:58 a.m., a 911 call was placed from one of the survivors' phones. The content of the call was a report of a friend who was unconscious, unresponsive. The words in the call were hesitant and panicked, as if the caller herself did not yet understand what had happened. When the police arrived at the scene, they found not one, but four victims lying motionless on 2 floors of the house. And at that moment, Moscow, the peaceful university town, entered a nightmare unprecedented in its history. Police immediately cordoned off the scene when they discovered the bodies of 4 students on 2 floors of the house. Investigators determined there were no signs of forced entry. The doors and windows were intact. No property was taken from the house, which virtually ruled out robbery. However, on Madison and Kaylee's beds, they discovered a key piece of evidence: a black knife sheath labeled K-bar, a type of military knife commonly used in the military. Autopsies showed that all 4 victims died from stab wounds with a sharp object. Ethan and Zana showed signs of defense, indicating that they were awake and trying to resist. Zana, in particular, had signs of undigested food in her body, indicating that she was awake at the time of the crime. Madison and Kaylee were stabbed more times, especially Kaylee, with serious injuries concentrated on the chest and face. It is these details that have led to the conclusion that the crime was carried out deliberately, brutally, and most likely had a personal or obsessive element. Police collected more than 15,000 tips from the public. They identified a white Hyundai Elantra that was seen near the scene at the time of the murder. Cell phone records showed that the car belonged to Bryan Kohberger, a doctoral student in criminology at Washington State University. Cell phone records also showed that Kohberger had been seen near the house several times in the months leading up to the murder. On December 30th, 2022, Kohberger was arrested at his parents' home in Pennsylvania. He was wearing gloves and sorting trash when he was arrested. Police seized several items of evidence, including a knife, a mask, and gloves. Kohberger was extradited to Idaho on January 4th, 2023, to face charges. Kohberger has pleaded not guilty. Defense attorneys have suggested another suspect, but have not provided any concrete evidence. Police used DNA from the knife sheath, phone records, and surveillance cameras to build their case. Investigators also found that Kohberger had searched the internet for information about the case and had photos of the victims on his phone. May 2023. Kohberger is charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of aggravated burglary. August 2025. Trial is scheduled to begin in Boise, Idaho. Penalty: if convicted, Kohberger could face the death penalty. The trial is currently underway, with many disputes over evidence and legal procedures. The tragic loss of 4 young lives, Kaylee, Madison, Zana, and Ethan, left an unfillable void in the hearts of their relatives, friends, and the entire Moscow community. Graduation photos that were not taken, farewells that were not said, and unfulfilled dreams still linger somewhere in that three-story house, becoming permanent scars in the memories of those left behind. The families of the victims, one by one, not only had to endure the pain of losing their children, but also had to face public opinion, the media, and the lengthy investigation process. Many mothers and fathers could no longer recognize their children in the cold forensic images, but they stood up and fought to clear up the case, to bring justice, not only for their children, but for millions of other parents out there. The case is a wake-up call to the fragility of life, even in the most peaceful places. It is a reminder that no one can predict what will happen, and that vigilance and community solidarity are essential. The house at 1122 King Road will be demolished at the end of 2023, a way to close the open wound. In its place, a memorial has been erected where people can come to lay flowers, light candles, and remember the 4 students who once smiled there. And in the silence of that garden, the whisper of justice still echoes, that the pain will eventually ease, but the memory of them will never fade.